So in terms of the cloud, probably many people aren't still 100% confident that they truly understand what the cloud is. In simple terms, there's three forms of the cloud. There's public cloud, private, and hybrid. Public cloud is probably the one that most people have heard of. It's in the news the most. It tends to be delivered by what we would call hyperscale providers, such as Amazon Web Services and Microsoft in their Azure platform. Public cloud tends to be the cheapest solution in terms of the total cost of delivery. The fact that they've got that hyperscale platform enables them to deliver a very low cost service. And when I talk about hyperscale, think of somebody like Domino's who on Super Bowl Sunday, they know that on that day they're going to receive far more orders than they would on any other day. At that point in time, they need to be able to scale their environment up really, really quickly, but only for a short period of time. And that's what public cloud enables them to do. On the day, they can massively increase their estate, and then the next day they can shrink it back down again, and they only pay for what they use. So in those terms, public cloud is absolutely fit for purpose. There are some disadvantages to public cloud. Clearly, a housing association is not going to be able to dictate their terms and conditions and their service level agreements to a service provider like Microsoft. Unfortunately, their terms are what you're going to have to live with. And what that means is that when Microsoft want to do an upgrade to your systems, you're going to have very little flexibility about when they choose to do that downtime. It's probably one of the biggest disadvantages for housing associations. They want to know that at any point in time they can control when the business is planning an outage and when it isn't. In terms of private cloud, many housing associations already have a private cloud. For years now, they've had high-speed internet circuits out to the internet, whether they be 100 meg lease lines that are resilient and their own internal data center. Technically, it's a private cloud. What we tend to call private cloud in Castleton is our environment, Castleton's own cloud infrastructure. And essentially what that is a much larger version of what an internal housing association would have, but a much smaller version than Microsoft's. So it has the ability to scale, not to the levels that somebody like Domino's would require of us, but certainly to the level of any housing association in the UK. We have that ability to have redundant resource available on demand so that should they need to quickly increase their growth, we would be able to support them on that. Now, clearly, what you will get with a private cloud provider is the ability to dictate your service level agreements. You can control and work with them on when you have downtime and when you upgrade your systems. But you don't necessarily get the cheapest cost per ownership that you would with a public cloud provider. So actually the third option that I mentioned, hybrid cloud, tends to be the one that we work with our customers to deliver these days. Hybrid cloud determines when it's best to use public cloud, such as Office 365. It's a good example where public cloud is sensible to use it. You need to license Office, so therefore you might as well at least store your data in the cloud and no longer have to manage internal Exchange servers. So it's an example where we work with customers to currently use public cloud, but then their key systems, their finance systems, their HR systems, CRM, housing management, all of those systems that they can no longer be allowed to be managed or dictated to in terms of service levels. This is where private cloud is fit. So that's why we deliver the best of private cloud and the best of public cloud in a hybrid fashion. Being in the cloud in terms of benefits for social housing, I think if we think about what we've talked about as to what the cloud is, it's essentially your infrastructure element. And what most housing associations tend to do is they have half their IT team dealing with the infrastructure and half their IT team dealing with business systems. And what that tends to mean is that they probably don't roll out business transformation as quickly as they possibly could, because they're having to concentrate on areas that necessarily they shouldn't need to deal with. So by moving to the cloud, what we're doing here is taking away that underlying platform that they have to manage and putting it into people that do this day in, day out as part of their job. What that does is it frees up the business's IT department to actually concentrate on the business applications. And in terms of transformation for a housing association, it's the applications that are ultimately going to deliver that. By hosting them in the cloud, however, it does give them that ability to get access to them anywhere. So all of your remote workers, when you're going out and seeing your tenants, they can access their systems and data from anywhere. Tenants themselves want to be able to pay their rent, book repairs. They want to be able to do that all online from the comfort of their own home on their own mobile device. And to do that, you need your software to be enabled and delivered such that it is enabling business transformation. So what you can't have is your IT department concentrating on dealing with, are my servers got enough storage? Have they got enough CPU, RAM? You need all of that taken care of. That's a headache that they don't actually need. Moving to a managed service provider and putting your data in the cloud takes away that risk from the business and enables them to concentrate on business transformation. If we talk about the IT estate and the way that it will be in the future, if we want to really look ahead, the reality is it's not going to exist in the way that it does today. There'll be no on-premise infrastructure. It will all be in the cloud. There's no getting away from it. Most housing associations at this point in time are either starting to use the cloud, are already in it, or if not, have a 3-year strategy to get to the cloud. So whilst it might be quite surprising to some and they may think, I'm not quite sure if that will be the case, I guarantee you in 3 to 5 years' time, the entire estate will be in the cloud in one form or another. In terms of difficulty, it's a complex process moving from an on-premise to a cloud server environment. That being said, if you're working with a trusted service provider, they can make that fairly seamless and fairly easy for you. In terms of the costs, I think that, again, it can massively vary. If we talk about public cloud, think about Office 365. Everyone in an internal IT department will have been familiar with doing an Exchange upgrade at some point in time from one version to another. And if they use a service provider to bring in their consultants to do that, I would say that the migration from an on-premise to a cloud version of Exchange is largely going to be in the same region. It's the same sort of project timescale, depending on the size of the housing association, a 5 to 15-day project. So in terms of that, we can largely say that they will be the same. Depending on if you want to be truly transformative and move your whole IT estate, again, it depends on the size of a housing association. We work with housing associations as small as 5 to 10 users, and we work with many that are up to 500 users. A project for a 5 to 10 user business, we've done that in a matter of weeks. A project for a large housing association is probably going to be a 3 to 6 to 9 months piece of work to ensure that all the risks are taken care of.